Jai Ma, Jai Guru Maharani, Guru Antaryami. Jai Ma, Jai Guru Maharani, Guru Antaryami. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're still here. You're still here.
Could you keep the studio or did you have to close the studio?
We closed it. Yeah.
Is it a relief or do you feel sad?
Mixed emotions, honestly. We had thought about making a change before COVID, but the way we wanted to do it versus the way it came down was very different.
Yeah.
So in some ways sad, in some ways relieved, because it was a lot to maintain, and we were there 15, 16 years.
Right.
The space held a lot of magic from everything that happened there.
Yes.
And so it was a big lesson for letting go.
Yeah, I get that.
And we wanted to teach more spirituality and want to invite people. We always would invite people for kirtan. We've had a lot of people there throughout the years for kirtan, and it was always a different group of people than the people that came for asana practice.
It's true.
Yeah.
I've seen that in places where I've gone to sing, like yoga studios where I've gone to sing. There's like definitely a shift to people who leave, they roll up their mats and they leave, and then there's a whole other crew that's never there for a class.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But we're still teaching. We have a virtual site which I mentioned. We do some live class. We do one class live in our backyard. We built a big, huge deck that can hold like maybe 20 people or something like that.
Maybe.
Big.
You can squeeze.
That's pretty big. 20 people on a deck.
Yeah.
That's big.
It's a big deck. So we still do some live classes. Once in a while we'll do a live event. Kirtan once in a while we'll lead, but not so much anymore. It's kind of sad that there was at one time Abby and I were starting to just develop to be able to do some type of kirtan, and there was another group in Ann Arbor, which is about 45 minutes away from us, that was doing regular kirtan every month. And so we felt like it was kind of starting to develop. There was going to be more kirtan available in the Detroit area. But then when COVID came, everything shut down, of course, and it just never come back. It's just pretty sad. And even when we've done some kirtans, there's like maybe 8 or 10 people show up. I just don't think that, that there's a thirst for it as much anymore. Maybe it's just that people aren't getting exposed to it and having the experience, So because I think if we could kind of force people to come in and sit down and be quiet and chant, maybe people would say, oh, there's something to this, But the Detroit area is a pretty strange area. There's tons of yoga studios. There's one on every corner, but
not a lot of yoga.
Not a lot of real what we're practicing in yoga, which is more spirituality, pujas.
I can understand that. I mean, it's slowly coming back here, and now, of course, there's another wave of COVID that's kind of wafting through. You can see more people with masks on, and doing kind of thing. But I mean, Detroit may be a difficult area for this.
Yeah.
But it's definitely coming back slowly.
Yeah.
So it's just,
well, we keep trying to. We're pushing forward and doing things. What I thought was interesting originally when I asked you to do this was that it actually came from Shama Chapin. She started to do offer Hanuman Chalisa every morning during COVID. I think she's been doing it like, I don't know, 20,000 days now. So I would listen, I would tune in once in a while, but it would always, come up on my phone that she's live. So I thought it would be interesting to talk to people like this and see how they came to their practice and what their practice is like, their experiences, and the idea was to be able to put that out into our community, particularly in the Detroit area, but we'll also put these things on YouTube as well, just to give people some inspiration and see that maybe there's something a little bit different. And we always hope that the words that people share with us will inspire others to maybe check things out. I think so far we've done Shama.
Mama Nancy of the Buddhist tradition, Tibetan Buddhism.
A friend of ours.
And Mark Whitwell. So we started with women, and I wanted to do a whole series of women. So we started with 2, and Mark Whitwell's kind of close to being a feminine being. I feel like he's very much connected.
He's a good friend of ours. He checks in with us once in a while, make sure.
Where is he now? Where is he?
He's at home in New Zealand.
Yeah.
I don't think he's traveling. He used to come to the States every year in the summer here. And I think he used to stay at Esalen was his kind of home base during the summer. But I don't think he's been, I know he's doing something in Bali. But I think other than that, he's just in
paradise,
Yeah, New Zealand paradise.
Why would you leave?
Yeah. And we've also interviewed Girish, a couple of guys.
Oh yeah, I forgot about Girish. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, Girish.
Yeah. We did have, Girish used to come to our studio every year, and then there was like 2 or 3 years that because of COVID, we didn't have anything. So he was here last, when was it, in the spring?
Yeah, he came and did a kirtan here in March.
Yeah.
And we rented a space, a nearby studio, and so we had a kirtan, which was nice. Mm-hmm. But also one of the reasons we started doing the interviews was because when we did have the studio, we would bring the teachers in and we felt that connection, and we missed that, and we're not the only ones, I'm sure. And so we were hoping to find out, and I know that you are like this vast being with everything you are giving to the world. It's incredible. And our take is our students probably don't know who you are, and so we'd like to give you an opportunity to share who is Nina Rao and what you would like to share from your journey and your daily practice now. What's going on now in your life?
What inspired me to write you, and I didn't know, I write a lot of people, and most people don't write back. But what inspired me was that Durga Devi she always puts together this, music in the background for asana classes. That something that she did when,
because of
Jiva Mukti. But in one of her playlists, she had your song Antarayami, and I listened to that, and I was out of the house, and I wrote her, and I texted her, and I said, who was that? Because I didn't remember. And she said, oh, that's Nina. And I've just been listening to that. It's just such a beautiful song. So I thought I have to write Nina and ask her if we can, speak with her. So.
And that's the power of sound, of, mantra, devotion. It's just you listen and you're taken into that space. And I've heard you say these words too, you're back home, you're washed clean, you're purified. It's magic. Yeah. And so there's so many people that don't really understand the potential of mantra and to really come alive and live your life from that space, which, you're one of the few that we know that have had this in your heart, in your soul for your whole life. And so your love and your devotion your practices have become your life. That is who you are. It's not, there's no separation. That's where we are moving. We've been trying to live that way. We're still a little bit caught more in the world, we feel like. Our yoga has become our life. We've become Bhakti yogis through and through. I've been studying also Buddhism. And I'm noticing your prayer wheel. And, just absorbing and living the teachings, embodying the teachings. And that's what we're really passionate about.
So just a little, premise here is that we are not professional interviewers. You know that you've been probably interviewed a million times and you've probably been asked the same questions that we're going to ask. So I apologize, but, we wanted to, the idea is to bring this firstly to the community of yogis in the Detroit area and people that are interested in that, and then, hopefully share some insight. I know every time you speak, there's something a little bit different that comes out. Just like, we've listened to every Ram Dass talk there is out there. And, there's like a theme. It's like he's saying the same thing over and over again, but in different ways. So sometimes just a word or a phrase or an observation or something like that, I think can really trigger something in people and can be the key. So, So anyway, all right, let's start the interview. So we're here with this afternoon or this morning, whatever time it is, with Nina Rao, Kirtan artist, and
Bhakti yogi.
Bhakti yogi. Yeah. So,
Jai Ma, Jai Ma, Jai Ma.
Jai Ma. Thanks for having me.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
I mean, we'll just talk casually.
Yeah. I'd like to give you the opportunity just to share what you would like to share based on what we just talked about.
Well, let's start with something we were just talking about prior to this was how, and I know, again, Nina, I know you've answered this question many times, but I think it would be interesting for people to hear, because I know you were, born in India and, how your experiences there. And I know you also studied, you were in a Catholic school, which is my base tradition as well. I was born into a Catholic family, and how your experiences in India and so forth led you to come to the United States, and how things got going for you.
Sure. So, firstly, I'll tell you that I was not born in India.
Okay.
I was born in Queens, New York.
Oh, really? Okay.
At Mary Immaculate Hospital. And my parents really lived a life where they wanted myself and my younger sisters to actually be in the West, because they felt that in India, the opportunity to live a good life was harder from an economic standpoint. And so we studied, and all three of us, live in America. But when we were young, we traveled with my father. He had a job that took him around the world, and we stayed in different places every 3 years. And it was during that time that we stayed in countries like Thailand, for example, and even in India, where the English medium schools were Catholic schools. So that's why we ended up in those schools, not particularly because of the religion, but just because they were English medium. But, when you grow up in an Indian family, you can't help but have traces of Indian culture, in your home, wherever it is, because it's inside my parents. They're first generation immigrants. And we also went back to my grandfather's home in India for summer holidays. And it was really during that time, I think, that I had my first sort of the portal opening into what is puja, what is bhajan, remembering God, what is worship. And, in those days when we went on vacation to his home, it was a it was a big house for the times, but it was on a rice plantation with fruit trees, and we had no phone, no internet, so we went there with our books and one or two books, and then we were just there, and every day was waking up in the morning and cutting the vegetables, washing the clothes, hanging out, walking around. Very simple. Like, I realized how simple life was for me as a young girl compared to how it is for my daughter, who's now 21.
Mm-hmm.
And it was then I discovered chanting as a practice, not even understanding that it was a practice. Like, I didn't think about these things back then. But my grandfather was sort of a natural musician, but also a devotee. He had a puja room in his house, which enshrined in the puja room is like our family deity, who is Sharada Devi. Saraswati Sharada Devi from Sringeri. Like, it's a very specific lineage from the south of India in Karnataka. And, he would do puja every day. My aunts would do morning and night. We take the lamp around the house. You have a tulsi plant in the front of the house, worshipped as a goddess, traditional things like this that were just a part of their lives. And nobody explained anything to us. We just followed along, as kids. It was fun. And it was I asked him to teach me how to play harmonium because I wanted to play music as a child, and I never really had the opportunity to have a piano, for example, because there wasn't an electric keyboard in these days. So I would have had to buy a piano, and how do you ship a piano from Bangkok to Toronto? It's not so easy, right? So I would play harmonium, just the songs that I knew from school, that we had learned on the harmonium. But then I said, Aja, just show us, like, what do you do? And he said, I will, but you have to sing with me. And it was when he did that we first did call and response chanting. He's taught us this Ganesha chant, which is actually on my first album, my album Antaryami, Shivadas, that you were talking about. So, and it really must have made some impression on me, because I recorded it on my portable little tape recorder. Remember, we have in those days, just
Yes.
throw buttons on it, and yeah. And I kept those tapes. We traveled everywhere. I don't have a single thing from my childhood at all, because we kept getting rid of stuff every time we moved. But somehow I have that tape.
Wow.
And
That's cool.
yeah. And so, but then, we went that summer, 2 summers, and I think and the other thing that happened is my grandfather had spiritual books in his home. So I was always looking on shelves, like, what am I going to read next, And he had in English the abridged translations of the Ramayana, of the Mahabharata, of Krishna Leela, and I would wait to go back there so I could read them again. This is what I mean about simplicity. It never occurred to me that I could actually buy my own copy, like, it was not. So, I mean, now I have those on my shelf because what happened was my grandfather got sick and he wasn't able to stay out there in the country, and they moved to the city and got rid of a lot of things. And that was sort of the end of my practice time with him, so to speak. And life carried on, and it was really only in my early 30s when I moved to New York to live in America and kind of fulfill my father's wish for us to make a life here. I came here and I took a yoga class in my gym. And it was there that my Jiva Mukti teacher, Kachi, was playing chanting, in the yoga class. And the memory of doing that chanting with my grandfather, with the space that we were in when we were there, when the village came home to our home, and we had like a real kirtan, and everybody would lead something, it was a community kirtan. Anybody, kids, old ladies with croaking voices, everybody would lead something. But it was so beautiful, and preparing prasad and the whole thing about doing that, about having satsang, like, what does that really mean? Like, you're studying Buddhism, Durga, so you understand, the three jewels, the Buddha, Dharma, and the Sangha is a big, that's that's key. And that's what we're
It's
doing,
huge.
3 of us together, right?
Yes.
And whoever else might end up listening to this.
Yeah.
So somehow I ended up at Kachi's yoga retreat. And I really felt like, I used to work out in a gym, but I really felt that there was something in the yoga. There was obviously another dimension to the yoga, and she taught it in a very spiritual way. That's her lineage. That's how she teaches. At least that's how she taught then. And I went to a retreat, and she had invited Krishna Das to sing and the satsang in the evening. This was in the early days. This was like 1996, 97, something like that. 96. And that was when, the veil came down, and I could see like where it was, which direction I wanted to move in. I saw it immediately, and there was no doubt in my mind. I didn't know why. I didn't know how. I didn't know what was happening, other than something that was moving me that was undeniable. That's all I could say. And I felt like for the first time, other than being in nature, which has always been something that I have taken solace in, to be in community, in prayer, in a practice that everybody's involved with, was my sanctuary. That's where I needed to be. And so I discovered that Krishnadas was singing every Monday at Jivamukti, and my childhood came back to me. We started having satsangs at home, in my home. My friends would come over because Krishnadas started traveling, and so we didn't have Monday nights. So we ended up just deciding we would chant at home. And many of my friends are actually good musicians, so they would be the leaders of the chants. And one of my friends said to me, she said, well, you learned some stuff from your grandfather. Like, why don't you sing something? And it was then that I realized that those chants I learned from my grandfather were still inside. I could still remember them,
Yeah, that's powerful.
That came back. And it was then that I realized that this practice I can do by myself. All the chants just kept going on and on inside of me. I'm sure you have that experience as well. It's like, the ever turning prayer wheel of mantra, like inside of you, in your breath. And so I told Krishnadas, I said, I need to buy a harmonium. And he said, wait. And then the next day he was driving through Manhattan, and he dropped off one of his old harmoniums to me. And so I just started like playing on it, not knowing anything about anything. And, over time, in addition to the melodies that I sang with my grandfather, other things started to kind of come through. And, chanting the Hanuman Chalisa has been a big part of my practice. Hearing it from Krishnadas's first album, and then going to see Siddhima in Kenchi in 1998. By that time, I had learned the Hanuman Chalisa, and when we went there, she gave that to us as a seva, like no cutting vegetables, no cleaning, go and do that, sing the name. So everything just kind of happened from there. I don't, like I said, I'm not a trained musician, so I don't think about this as music. There are people who are chanting out there who are much better musicians than me. My people who accompany me as musicians are much better musicians than me. But definitely chanting became the thread of my life, and it's never gone away. I mean, it takes different forms when, you're moving, you've got a child, it's all kinds of things happen, and it changes like what happens. And, we were talking about COVID earlier. One of the things that happened with COVID was that because I also couldn't go anywhere to sing with other people, I ended up doing so much stuff online that I was essentially chanting all day, more than I do now, because I couldn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
And one of the things my friends asked me to do was to lead the chanting of 11 Hanuman Chalisas every morning. And so we started that during COVID, and we do a recitation every day, still doing it. I'm not always there, but the group, it's taken such a hold that if I'm not there, somebody else would lead it, and everybody just does their practice simultaneously at home. We can't hear everyone, but the fact is that we're sitting together and committing with this intention to offer these prayers to ourselves, to all the great beings, and to everyone, right? So here we are.
Thank you.
So speaking about, offering the Chalisa or something like that on via Zoom, I've often wondered what people's experiences, doing mantra or singing kirtan or whatever, and they're doing it in their room by themselves, maybe by their altar, their sacred space, or doing asana practice by themselves. I mean, do you think that, and I know there's a dynamic where, because we're social beings, that, it's nice to be with a lot of people, but I'm wondering what you think about, like Krishna Das was doing a lot of, he was doing the things every Thursday for a long time.
Still is. He still is.
Yeah. So a lot of people are just there by themselves in front of their computer screen. And I'm wondering if do you feel like there's any advantage to that or any benefit, just, being by yourself and doing essentially your own practice, but like you said, you're doing it with a group of people, maybe all around the world, and we don't really know, so.
I understand your question. The thing that we understood at the start of COVID was that the isolation was very difficult for people. And even if we connected this way on Zoom, the support of your community is everything. Now, Krishnadas, we all activated, and because that I'm his assistant and I manage everything that's going on. So we got that together, and then now he started touring again, but when he's home, he's still doing the live thing. And everywhere he goes, and in my inbox, I hear from people saying, "You saved my life." Being there, because he showed up, they can show up for themselves. You have to think about it that way, because the hardest part for all of us who are practicing is getting here in this spot on this seat. Once you get here, all right, fine, your mind is like wandering, whatever, you do whatever your mantra practice is to bring you back. But the point is that you're here. You got here. And sometimes we need the help of somebody or our community to do that. It's not so easy to practice by yourself,
Right.
Yeah.
And so though you can't hear the voices of the other people who are chanting, other than the leader, like when I lead Hanuman Chalisas on Zoom, they can hear my voice, but they're chanting at home along with me. So, there's a lovely young woman on my Zoom who got married, got pregnant, and had a baby all through this time.
Wow.
This morning, this child is now, she's, 7-8 months, and she's at the puja table, playing with little Ganeshas and listening while her mom is chanting. So, and that probably wouldn't happen, because for the mother also, like, she needs that inspiration. She needs an anchor, someplace to come, and then the baby receives the benefit of it.
Yeah.
So even when we do these live events and we put up a recording, like you were having this conversation, the three of us, somewhere it'll remain in the ethers and someone will hear it. And if you inspire just one person, then that person inspires someone else. And it's all, that's what we need. We need that spark to ignite, this ability within ourselves to turn toward ourselves. We need that. It's not so easy to find that, because we get so carried away by what our expectations are, our thought processes. But if someone can help us turn inward, then that's a great blessing.
Yeah, thank you for that. And the impact, I mean, what you just described, the impact on that one young mother and how her child was immersed in the sound current the whole time inside of her. And now it's just naturally a part of her. And that is very powerful. That couldn't have happened in person, not daily like that.
Yeah, not daily.
So, right. So that's incredible. And that's something to think about too, you know, the power of the technology and what it can do and how it can help. And I mean, we experienced at the beginning of COVID of also connecting that way for Kirtan. It was very helpful.
It was. But also on another level, I've always wanted to study more, about the roots of chanting. And I've never had the possibility of doing that just because of traveling so much, having a young child, and, just my daily work, living life, like trying to make ends meet, all the things that we all have to do. But by being online, I discovered the teacher that I didn't know before, but I knew I was looking for, so that I can now study Veda and chanting in the tradition that I've always wanted to look and never thought was available to me. But just by chance on Instagram, I saw her. And now I've been studying with her for 2 years. And, I really feel it deepens my own practice. It's another sanctuary for me. And another community of people that I'm, can be part of. And it all blends together. And now somehow we're all going to be in India together in November, I don't.
Wow.
So
Magical.
it's really is magic. So
and I think that is also the power of living it, is the magic that happens.
Yeah.
The unfolding that, you could have never dreamed this would happen. But because this is your living path, it's just like the seed blooming. This is your life.
Yeah, this is my life. But for other people, it doesn't have to be their life. But the practice can help them live whatever life they want in a better way. I mean, what is this all about? What are we doing? We're trying to do practice here to calm our minds a little bit and to open our hearts in such a way that we can feel a connectedness. And connectedness to what? Connectedness to everything that's out there, to the to the extent that we can, to our family, our immediate friends and family circle, but more importantly, like even just to our own inner being, so that you can stand in that wisdom, to learn to trust one's own heart in whatever we might do in our lives. Like, it's not necessary that you have to chant all day. It's not. Just do a little practice every day, whatever that is for you. And even if it's yoga asana, deepen your practice, because asana is one step of it's one point in a huge web of traditional practice in the Hindu tradition from India. Just one. There's so many other facets of it, including chanting, including reading of scriptures, including Ayurveda, including astrology, you name it, everything. It's all part of practice. And if you can use this place to center yourself, like whatever the practice does for you, then whether you're a doctor or a sanitation worker or a hospice worker or a chef, or who knows what anybody's doing, it doesn't matter. It becomes, it infuses your whole life.
Yeah, living from your truth with clarity, with more ease, more compassion, more connection, a richness, right? A fullness of life.
For oneself and for everyone else. And it's not like you have to do anything. You just are it.
Yes.
And everyone can feel it. You don't have to go around saying to everybody that, oh, I do this practice. It doesn't matter.
So
I
I,
think
yeah,
it is an important thing to consider that there are people who don't fully understand that there is access to that space through practice. So, I hear what you're saying about how yoga is practiced in some places as purely a physical exercise.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can just, never mind doing yoga, but if you can even just, let's say you're a runner or you go on a walk, if you can just change your view a little bit so that now when you're walking, you're feeling into your breathing, and then you're looking outward at the trees, at the person who's passing by, at the smells of whatever, the flowers, the grass, whatever's giving you allergies, like whatever it is. But like really find a way to get here. There's so many ways to do practice.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, so I mean, yoga, because of the way the asanas work and the lines in your body that are being activated energetically, pranayama, all that stuff, that's like a true practice. And if people really did it in that way, your mind will open anyway. But it is the job of a teacher to help to open that mind. And it's just not practiced like that anymore. So
yeah.
I remember a time I've been practicing Ashtanga Vinyasa yoga, and it was just purely physical. I just kind of happened across it, and I just thought it was a cool thing to do, keep my body in shape. It was powerful. And I was at a class one day, and this song came on in the playlist the teacher was playing. It was Om Namah Shivaya by Krishna Das. And in that moment, something changed. And I'm not saying that it was necessarily Krishna Das, but it was the sound current of it. And it just changed the way I practice. And I started to just really, it helped me to really feel into my body and feel the muscles and the miracle of how the body works, how muscles contract, how the heart beats, how we breathe, how we think. So it did change something for me, so.
I mean, that's the magic of mantra.
Yeah.
Those syllables, those medicinal syllables that we don't know the formula of, they were created in divinity, but the only way to feel the benefit of it is to hear it and to speak it, or to sing it, or however we might do it. But at first, if we can open our ears to it, it already is you've watered that seed inside yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had that seed planted really young.
Yeah.
With the mantra Om Namah Shivaya from Baba Muktananda, who was my aunt's guru. And so just interesting hearing you say the words like an undeniable, feeling. That's how I felt. I didn't know anything. I chanted alone in my room as a young teenager. But then as an adult being reintroduced to mantra through yoga, I had that reawakening, and it was this undeniable, like, oh my gosh, something just happened and my life is going to be different. I know it, because it was undeniable that this was part of who I am. And so, and that came, in just, might want to say by chance, but from having the seed planted early, it was dormant a long time,
Yeah.
Almost 20 years dormant. So, but it's undeniable when it awakens. And so I appreciate you sharing that, because I think that some people think, well, I'm just at this place in my life, nothing's going to change. But you never know. As Ram Dass says, the story, you just never know what can happen.
The thing that we know is that change is constant. So anything is possible.
Right.
In whichever direction that we might see as a direction.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to ask you, Nina, and I almost hate to use the word guru because it's so, people throw this around in the yoga world. They start to get involved and interested in yoga, go to a yoga studio. Pretty soon you feel like you need to go to have a guru. You must go to India and things like that, And so I don't really want to use the word guru, but you did mention in another interview that I watched with you recently, you mentioned the first time you went to see Krishna Das, there was a picture of Maharaji. So I guess I wanted to ask you, what was it something also with that, or was it just the chanting? And the second part of the question would be, who inspires you today? What energy or what deity or what being inspires you today?
When I first met Krishnadas, I had never thought about a guru. We'd never had a family guru, like many Indian families have a guru, but we didn't have that. Our lineage was direct worship of the deity, like I mentioned to you, is Saraswati.
Yeah.
But my grandfather sang bhajans for all these beings. It wasn't like he was a particularly Devi worshiper. He would sing for anything. So any of the, whether it's Shiva or Ganesha or Krishna, any of those in our tradition. So when I met Krishna Das, I didn't know what I was in for, really. Like I actually thought that I was going to be very disappointed by going to his chanting and I would be bored. So I didn't want to go to the program that night, but I went just to be part of the group. And I think I just felt like, what could, I was listening to a lot of Indian classical music at that time. And so I just thought, like, what am I going to sing with this white guy? I mean, this is my bias. I'm just being very honest with you. Yeah. The time, it was momentary, but that was the thought in my head, because I love being with white people. That's all I do. So that has nothing to do with brown or white or anything. It was just a ridiculous thing. So, I also don't think of myself as different, but that's another story. So when I heard him, I mean, my memory, I don't just have a very clear, it's my version of what happened that day, because who knows, everybody else has their own experience, right? But I do remember thinking, wow, there's a little picture of Hanuman, little picture of Maharaji with a candle on the side table. And I said, oh, I wonder who that is. That's all. I didn't ask. I just remember having that thought. And then when Krishna started singing, all those thoughts fell away. And I ended up moving from the back of the room to the front of the room. Like by the end of the kirtan, I was sitting right in front of him, and I don't even remember moving. So with the prior thought of leaving, I chose to sit back so that I could leave. And it was such a heart-opening experience, just chanting with him. And then I was with him. We were all with him the whole weekend. And he started talking about Maharaji. And it was in him talking about Maharaji that I felt that devotional pull that is, again, undeniable when someone's talking about such an experience that they have, either with the being or with the practice or whatever experience they might be having.
Yeah.
It was his relationship with Maharaji. Yeah. And it was then, I became friends with him at that retreat, and I would say, like, what's going on with me? Why am I crying? Like, what's happening? And I want a guru. I want your guru. And he said, well, it's a little late, because he like literally left the body like over 20 years ago from that time when I had met him. And so he said, but you don't need a guru. He was giving me all this stuff. And I said, that's easy for you to say. You had that experience with Maharaji in the body and all this. So I said, I need to go to Kenchi. Doesn't matter. He's not there, but I need to go. I'm a traveler anyway, so I'm very happy to. I like to go to spots, different places. So he said, okay, well, if you're going, then you go at this time of the year and meet Siddhima. who nobody talked about in those days because she didn't want anybody to talk about her.
Right.
So we went during Navratri, Devi Navratri in the fall. And I thought to myself, oh, she's going to be my guru. That's definitely what's going to happen. And I just felt like when I first saw her, my heart would explode and everything would change and, nothing would be the same. And it's true, that did happen, but not in the way that I thought it would happen, We have such expectations of everything. She's much more subtle and much more omnipresent than that. It wasn't, it's been a progression over time. But I did realize by being in Kenchi that there are people, there are beings in this world, not just Ma, not just Siddhima, but there are many beings in this world who are following this path of looking inward to find that one space where we're all interconnected, where everything is okay, where everything is sub-ek, like Maharaji used to say, and where everything is sab theek ho jayega, which means everything's going to be okay. Everything is okay. It doesn't feel like that. Clearly, like we wake up in the morning with palpitations thinking about something that we have to do today, or somebody's not well in your family. I mean, we all have these challenges, right? So did they. So did Ma. She had things that she had to deal with, but towards the end of her life, she was completely turned inwards, and she helped us over the years to deal with our regular life. We were not trying to be celibate or anything. We had householder lives. We fell in love, we got married, we got divorced, we had children. We've done all the things, all of us who went to see her. And through it all, she's been there. And to answer your question, Shivadas, about like who continues to be your inspiration, for me, it is her, even though she's not in the body anymore. But my time with her, the things that she shared with me, they are permanent and ever expanding. And I have nothing to do with it. She's just there. And I recognize that we all have that experience, even when we haven't met a guru in the body. So I'm repeating what Krishna said to me that irritated me. But I recognize now that those moments when I was a young girl walking through my grandfather's coconut plantation and just feeling that sense of innate well-being, that's the same space. Same space. It's not any different. It's just harder to get to on will. Like you just can't will it. Either arises or it doesn't. And the way to clear the path to that space, which we all have inside of us, is to do practice. So it's become, so many people ask me, what do? I don't have a guru. Make your practice your guru. Bow to the practice. That's all, that's what we've got. And that's what I've learned from Ma. Like if you don't do some practice and you don't do a regular practice, you're going to be lost. You have to have something to hold on to. Find what it is. Find what it is. Make it your own. We're here in the West. We're not born into families with gurus. We're not born in the 60s, like with Ram Das and all the hippies who went to India. We're not born like that. We're born here now like this. So this is the way we're going to share in the community. This is where we're going to help each other. And these great beings have not gone anywhere. We are so fortunate. We have books. We have pictures we can look at. We have documentary films about saints. This prayer wheel that I'm turning, I was inspired by many years ago when I saw a film about Garchen Rinpoche, who lives in Arizona. I had no idea that he was even alive anymore. And somehow, 15 years later, I end up going to his ashram and having a completely life-changing experience being with him. And it doesn't affect my relationship with Ma. She's there. All it does is make it more expansive.
Yeah, I love
And
that. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
The blending of the paths and the inclusion of different ways to experience the same.
absolutely. I mean, including going to Mass in my Catholic school.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing happened when I sang hymns to Jesus.
Mm.
I begged to go to Mass because for us non-Catholics, they had a class called moral science. It was horrible. I was like, it's just horrible. Like you're basically telling you do this, don't do this, which is probably how a lot of Catholic school is. I just never went to Catholic school, but in Mass in the chapels, they weren't talking, they were singing.
Yeah, experiential, like a
There's a
puja.
devotion.
Yeah.
There's a devotion. And I felt that.
You know, after just speaking about kind of about Catholicism and about, I guess this could apply this to any religion. I was born in a Catholic family. I went to Catholic school my whole life, and I just couldn't wait to be done with high school so I wouldn't have to go to Mass anymore. And then, you know, many years later, I became interested in puja and, you know, doing rituals and things like this and chanting in Sanskrit and things like that. And then one Christmas, I don't know how long ago this was, it was many years ago now, I took Durga Devi, I just had a feeling like I wanted to go to midnight mass on Christmas Eve. So, and even though, you know, I didn't really resonate with the priest, but I realized that I just had this ridiculous realization that I should have realized many years ago, that they're just doing puja. There's candles, there's incense, there's offerings, there's wine, and, you know, all I guess that wine isn't a thing, but, you know, I mean, it is in Catholic tradition. And it just, I just realized that it's all the same thing, and it doesn't matter if it's Jesus or Allah or, you know, whatever resonates with you. So
For sure.
yeah.
I mean, Maharaji received everyone that way. Siddhima received everyone that way. There were no divisions there. When, you know, when they were giving darshan, and that's a model for us, for the way we should live our lives too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I want to thank you also for what you said just a little bit ago, because there was a time, Nina, just maybe a few years ago, that I was asking everybody that I could, that everybody that I thought might have an answer, I would ask them, like, well, you know, it was easy for Krishna Das and Ram Das and these other people that you know, experienced Maharaji in person. They had some experience with miracles, I guess, you know, or things that they couldn't explain. You know, the devotees of Ramakrishna the same way, maybe Siddhima the same way. But then, you know, the question I always ask is, like, what do we do today? Because there are no people like that. And it seems like our society is, I'm sure there are beings like this, but, you know, at least in my mind then, I thought, well, our society is expanding out so much, it's kind of pushing any living beings that we might be able to experience that with, it's pushing them more and more out of our reach, until one guy that I know that lives in Encinitas, California. He's a pujari at the Ramakrishna temple there, the temple to Kali. And he said, well, what do you need a guru for? He said, what about your breath? What about your heartbeat? Isn't that enough of a miracle for you? So that really changed the way I thought about these things, you know. So, but, you know, I do agree with you. It's good to read the books. I mean, there's so many things we can read in a book. You can read a story or just a verse or a line. Just sometimes a word seems like something clicks, you know. So
it is. I was going to say, I mean, he said the perfect thing to you, but I think it's important for us to have a sense of gratitude for actually all the miracles that have already occurred in our lives. You know, these great beings are all there, invisible in the backdrop of our lives. There are beings out there practicing for our welfare, solely for our welfare. It's incredible. We don't see them, but they're there.
I believe that. And we have had a lot of miracles.
Exactly. I believe you.
Yeah.
And so has everyone, you know. But the thing is that, you know, we have so many mental and emotional challenges. It's natural. That's the nature of our lives, is suffering, you know. That's just the nature of things. But we also need to learn that there's a way out of it, depending on how we look at it. And how do we change the way we look at it is where practice comes in.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And so, I mean, it goes back to the three jewels, what you're talking about, you know, that the Dharma, the teachings themselves, the practices themselves are the guru, can be the awakening will come through those methods, those vehicles, and comes back to the commitment to have a practice, a regular, consistent practice. And we do teach our students to have a morning routine practice, whatever it is that works for them. And we encourage to have a space that's dedicated for that. So the energy, like, you know, you sit in it and it's like you're there because you've built the energy there, and it's the memory of that energy too when you sit in it over and over again. So is your, and if it's too personal, just let me know, is your morning practice, has it shifted much over the last just few years with COVID, or do you have kind of a regular type of practice in which it has become part of your life?
I mean, the way I do my practice changes all the time. But when I first heard the Hanuman Chalisa, I knew I wanted to learn it. And that has been the foundation for everything and continues to be. But I also love to do japa practice, you know, of my mantra. And, you know, while I have an altar space at home, I'm on the road a lot too. So, you know, I like to use my time in my car when I'm cooking, when I'm on a plane, to actually engage in practice as much as possible. In addition to watching movies, I'll admit. But whenever there's a moment, an opportunity to remember the practice, it's good to do it, even for a couple of minutes. And it really starts to fortify that practice muscle in your body. The more you do it, the more you'll do. That's really how it works, you know. And it's kind of like, you know, when you don't run, you feel like running less. But the more you know, it's a strange kind of relationship. So it's the same with this. The more you practice, the more you want to do. But things happen. You know, you have, like, for example, I was practicing a lot by myself, and then I got pregnant, and, you know, one of the things Siddhima said to me, and, you know, this would just be obvious really, is that she said, do as much practice as you can during your pregnancy, because your baby will also receive the benefits of that. And but also after the child is born, is keep the child close. Keep the child close. So the child, then what happens is that you're creating these sanskaras in the child's life. So, for example, my daughter grew up, you know, with me drumming. Like literally the week before she was born, I had a drum on my lap, you know, and she's listening to 108 Hanuman Chalisa. So, and when she grew up, her father and I were very serious. Like we were always chanting. I was. We put her to sleep singing chanting, but that's just us. Everybody has to do that, but that's what we did.
Mm-hmm.
And so even though now I wouldn't say, while she's dealing with her young adult life and all the anxieties that go with it, I don't say to her, oh, you really need to sit down and do your mantra practice. It's not possible, but I know she has it in her.
Yeah.
So when she needs it, she will rise to that. But when we're all together practicing, it's just there. It's there naturally for her.
Mm-hmm.
And so like you were saying, when you sit at your altar, you energize your surroundings with the practice. The same way is that the more you do it, you just energize yourself. So you take it with you everywhere you go.
Mm-hmm.
So while you're home, good, find a place where your computer's not on, your phone is not on, and it's your sacred space to sit. But you have to be able to take that sacred space with you wherever you go, and it will happen on its own the more you practice.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Namaste.
you for inviting me. It's really beautiful to be with both of you. And
Thank you, Nina.
I do have one other question, and just maybe in a short answer if you don't have time. You mentioned your study of the Vedas. So does that include Vedic chanting?
yes, it is Vedic chanting,
Okay,
actually.
So my question then would be, what do you feel is different between Vedic chanting, which is the kind of the three tones, versus singing like when we chant, many people chant, and they're kind of just singing more American style melodies, and I know they're both beautiful. They both have their place, but I'm wondering, if you could speak about the differences and the different energy or the different experience we might have, one versus the other.
I feel like that could be a whole course, but do your best, Nina.
I've done 2 courses like that, actually. Where we do actually do both practices so people can experience, what that is. Truthfully, they're very different, but they're the same. For me, they take me to the same place. The thing I love about Veda chanting is that you really have to concentrate because you have to do it right. Otherwise, it's not Veda.
That's true.
So if your interest is in trying to create a better sense of concentration and awareness, you have to listen very carefully to make sure you're doing things in the correct way. That's part of the tradition. It's just what you're doing. It's like, you can come from any background, any language, it doesn't matter. But you do have to get the pronunciation right, the rhythm right, and the swaras, which is the notes. And there's no pattern. You have to learn each prayer. Right. Each prayer is individual and different. Right. So it's a really beautiful way to, and again, you're employing the power of the mantra. When you get it right, you're actually watering that seed in the best way. The soil becomes fertile. And you have to believe that that's what's happening for you. And if you try it and you start to do things in this way and it resonates for you, just keep doing more and more. My own teacher, who's been studying for years and years, she's constantly learning new prayers and perfecting the ones that she knows. It's a lifetime's worth of intention and energetic input. But to me, it's changed everything for me in a lot of ways. I like having that structure, and I like going back to the roots of the tradition, because that's where all this kirtan stuff comes from. Because kirtan in India is not even performed like it is here, although now it's gone circular and a lot of Indians are singing Western melodies. So
I was just kind of imagining, like, the first time Krishna Das went to India and chanted, like, I wonder if he had some apprehension about doing it because he's doing it, there. And I'm wondering how people responded.
He tells one story where he was chanting the Hanuman Chalisa for Maharaji, and he made a mistake in the pronunciation. and Maharaji tried to correct him. And he said, like, his mind went blank, like he just couldn't. And Maharaji said, never mind, keep going. And he never corrected him again. Because, you know, all these great beings, there's no way we can do it perfectly. If we did it perfectly, we probably wouldn't have to do it anymore. So, because it would have already taken us to the place where we need to be, and who knows what's there in that place. But the main thing is to just do the practice. Siddhima never tried to correct us. She made us sit there and sing for Maharaji. God knows what it sounded like to, you know, the Indians who would come. But somehow, because our intention was there to like do there and do the practice and be there, people come and sit around us, and it's infectious.
Yeah.
Is infectious. And if the devotion is what helps us turn in the right direction, to help us find that place of unconditional love, to find a way to be kind to each other, to find a way to be kind to ourselves. It takes time. It's not obvious all the time. But we can get there.
I believe so too. And I want to thank you too for your dedication to the Hanuman Chalisa, because that has been my mainstay of my morning practice for a long, long time. And we have chanted it with you several occasions, different locations, including the magical retreat at Maui with Ram Dass. And we were there, and it's just so powerful. And I don't remember if it was the first time at Bhakti Fest when we first chanted with you, but at one point we didn't know it, and we chanted with you, and we were really inspired to really learn it. And we were blessed to have an opportunity to learn it with Bhagavan Das, who kind of put the fire under us and just said, we're chanting it 11 times, so you better know it. And I think the power of the practice of learning the Hanuman Chalisa and then practicing and chanting it. And thank you for sharing that story of Krishna Das losing his place, because that's what happens. If you break that flow, you're in the flow of the prayer. And if you come out of it and you're in your mind, it's like you're out of it.
The flow is the only way we go.
And it does have just that magic to it. There's something about it. It's just very...
It's Mahamantra.
Yeah.
The wisdom is in the mantra, but we have to do it.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much, Nina. If people want to connect with you to see where you're teaching, it's
NinaRaoChant.com.
We'll put the link.
Put the link on there, And maybe one day you'll come to the barren desert of spirituality, Detroit, Michigan.
I might.
Okay.
I actually have a family that lives in like Toledo, Ohio, which I think is not.
Yeah, very close.
If I end up going there, I'll let you know, and we can do. I can come up to Detroit, and we can.
Oh, that'd be so wonderful. Just be so wonderful to be with you as well.
I would be happy to.
You're a very wise teacher. Thank you so much for your inspiration.
Welcome. Thank you for having me.
Namaste. Have a good day.
You too.
Jai Ma.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
See you next time.
Jai Ma, Jai Guru Maharani, Guru Antaryami. Jai Ma, Jai Guru Maharani, Guru Antaryami. Jai Ma, Jai